Consider supporting The Loft on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/C64Woody or click the link in the description. Thank you so much. Hey everyone, and welcome to The Loft. I'm Woody. This week we're going to learn about St. Patrick. Yes, St. Patrick's Day was last Wednesday on the 17th, but life has a funny way of derailing plans. Let's get right into it though. Patrick is one of my favorite saints. I love the hymn based on his Lorica, or Breastplate. It in fact is my favorite hymn and is playing during this video. Be sure to check the description for the lyrics. So much of Celtic Christianity, which obviously is heavily influenced by Patrick, I find to be extremely beautiful. The lyrical poeticism, the love of nature, the earthy yet loftiness of it all, the love and devotion to history and the written word, like the Book of Kells, the quiet reflectiveness of Celtic monasticism, all of it is very appealing to me. So, who was Patrick? We've all heard the legends, like him driving the snakes from Ireland. Fossil evidence shows that there probably have never been snakes in Ireland, at least since the Ice Age. But I look at the legend as more of an allegory, him driving out the forces of evil, the darker, more pagan groups that controlled the country of Ireland. And if you look at scripture, imagery meant to convey evil and demonic forces are often portrayed with snakes and vipers. So we've heard that story, and we've heard many more. But who actually was St. Patrick? Plenty of others have told his story. Documentaries, movies, even an episode of the Christian children's radio show Adventures in Odyssey dramatized his life. That's where I actually first heard the story of St. Patrick. Another YouTuber, Lutheran Satire, who is one of my favorite channels, has even made a Hamilton parody based on St. Patrick. Check the description for the link. But I wanted to give my interpretation of his life, so let's explore it together. Patrick was not actually Irish, but was born in Roman Britain, though we're not entirely certain as to where on the British Isle. Some traditions place it in England, identifying it as Glanoventa in modern Ravenglass in Cumbria. There have also been claims for other locations in both present-day Scotland and in Wales. I personally tend to agree with those who say he came from what is now Wales. His father was a deacon and his grandfather a priest. Patrick, however, was not an active believer. According to the Confession of St. Patrick, at the age of 16, he was captured by a group of Irish pirates. They took him to Ireland, where he was enslaved and held captive for 6 years. After 6 years of captivity, he heard a voice telling him that he would soon go home, and then that his ship was ready. Fleeing his master, he traveled to a port 200 miles away, where he found a ship and with difficulty persuaded the captain to take him. After returning home to Britain, Patrick continued to study Christianity. Patrick recounts that he had a vision a few years after returning home. He says, "I saw a man coming, as it were, from Ireland. His name was Victoricus, and he carried many letters, and he gave me one of them. As I read the heading, The Voice of the Irish, as I began the letter, I imagined in that moment that I heard the voice of those very people who were near the wood of Falkland, which is beside the Western Sea, and they cried out as with one voice, 'We appeal to you, holy servant boy, to come and walk among us.'" Patrick studied in Europe, principally in Auxerre. Saint Germanus of Auxerre, a bishop of the Western Church, ordained him to the priesthood. Acting on his vision, Patrick returned to Ireland as a Christian missionary, possibly landing at Wicklow County, Wicklow, at the mouth of what is now called the River Vartree. Wicklow may also be the port through which Patrick made his escape after his 6 years of captivity. Tradition has it that Patrick was not welcomed by the locals and was forced to leave and seek a more welcoming landing place further north. The first sanctuary dedicated by Patrick was at Saul. Patrick's position as a foreigner in Ireland was not an easy one. His refusal to accept gifts from kings placed him outside the normal ties. He wouldn't take gifts legally. He was without protection, and he says that he was, on one occasion, beaten, robbed of all he had, and put in chains, perhaps awaiting execution. Mercieux's Life of St. Patrick contains a supposed prophecy by the Druids, which gives an impression of how Patrick and other Christian missionaries were seen by those hostile to them. Across the sea will come Adzehed, crazed in the head, his cloak with hole for the head, his stick bent in the head. He will chant impieties from a table in the front of his house. All his people will answer, so be it, so be it. Patrick continued his effort to Christianize Ireland and was made a bishop in Ireland. He died late in the 5th century. Some sources say it may be as early as 460 or even as late as 493. The date of his death is unknown, but it is thought to be March 17th, the day of his feast day. He was declared a saint centuries before the modern formal canonization process was put into place. So why do we celebrate St. Patrick's Day here in the US? Or why is it celebrated in other places where he is not the patron saint? In this country, at least, it makes some degree of sense because of the large amount of people from Irish descent here. In modern US celebrations, though, it has morphed from a religious feast day to an excuse to drink bad beer with green dye to excess, wear green, and claim to be Irish. It's trivialized and commercialized. For a long time, though, even here, it was treated with respect. Not only is it a celebration of the life of St. Patrick and the conversion of Ireland to Christianity, it's a celebration for the Irish of their national and cultural identity. I say we should return to this. When I celebrate St. Patrick's Day, I contemplate the life of the saint himself. I reaffirm my striving to mimic his life when I can. Toast to the Irish with a pint of Guinness, maybe an Irish whiskey, and maybe, for some fun, I use an Irish accent or a lilt throughout the entire day. I'll listen and sing St. Patrick's Breastplate. Next year, though, I think on March 17th, you should think back to the story of St. Patrick. Say a prayer for Ireland and toast Patrick. I'm still deciding what I want to do next. I'll either start on the Terry A. Davis and Temple OS series or work on some soldering. I finally have some new wire and a better cutting and stripping tool, so I can definitely start on that once again. Let me know in the comments which you'd prefer to see next. Until then, thanks for stopping by and I'll see you next time.